And welcome to the Southbridge School Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 10th, 2015. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order, please, at 7 o'clock p.m. May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Congdon?
Present.
Mr. Lebo?
Present.
Dr. Page?
Present.
Mrs. Donovan?
Present.
Mrs. Quinney?
Present.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Present.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
She's excused. Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 3, public input. Is there any member of the public that would like to address the school committee this evening? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, approval of the consent agenda. The following items are on tonight's consent agenda. Meeting minutes from our regular school committee meeting of February 10th, 2015, and our regular school committee meeting minutes of February 24th, 2015. In addition, we have second readings of our policy BEDF, voting method, policy BGE, policy dissemination, policy BHE, use of electronic message by school committee members, policy BIBA, school committee conferences, conventions, and workshops, and policy BJ, school committee legislative program. Does any member wish to remove any item from the consent agenda? Okay, if no, if there's no objections, then the aforementioned items will be adopted. Is there any objection? Okay, seeing no objection, the items A, 1, and 2, as well as items B, 1 through 5, are adopted by unanimous consent. Thank you. Agenda item number 5, chairperson's announcements. There are 2 announcements this evening. This is a friendly reminder that this Friday, March 13th, is a half-day of school for students. Students at Southbridge Middle High School will be dismissed at 11:15 a.m., and all other schools will be dismissed at 11:45 a.m. The second announcement is that on Thursday, March 12th, the Suburban Coalition will meet to discuss the FY16 budget and local aid. Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito is scheduled to address the group. School committee members, as well as town leaders, should have received an invitation via email. This meeting will be held at the Newton Marriott from 7 to 9 p.m., and an RSVP is required if you plan to attend. And that is all for Chairwoman's announcements. Our next item on the agenda are presentations. This evening, we are very pleased to have Mr. Vinnie Regan. He is our principal from West Street School, as well as one of his IRS ladies there, Marita Murray. So we welcome you both, and I'll turn the floor over to you, Mr. Regan. Thank you.
So I have Maria Murray with me. Also, I just want to acknowledge Stacy Burgess is going to be here. She'll be coming up also, my assistant principal. I also want to thank Kathy Schofield at IRS and Lynn Levis, our academic dean, who helped us with the presentation and have formed a real good senior leadership team for West Street School. So I appreciate their work, and they're here to help me with any questions or anything like that. So, as you're aware, these are our 4 goals in our AIP. So the presentation tonight is around those and the data points we're using with the state, and some other related pieces and some of the actions we're taking as a school. So not to belabor the point, but you know the 4 elements of the AIP. So our first strategic objective around curriculum. Our data here, it's hard to see, I think, from your seat, but hopefully you've got a copy you can see. Our goal that we adopted from the AIP was that 70% of our students that were reading below grade level, as measured by the September DIBELS benchmark, will attain grade level by June, or at least have 1 grade level growth. As you can see, I have the 5 grade levels and where we are. It's mixed results. In some grade levels, we've made some gains with those kids who were below benchmark, but we've also slipped some other kids who may not have made the second benchmark of the year. As the skills get higher, especially in the lower elementary grades, it's a big jump. So grades 1 and 2, it's a bigger jump in skills than maybe grade 4 or 5, where the skills don't jump as fast. So you'll see grades 1 and 4, 18% growth with those kids who are below and 22% growth with those kids who are below are pretty strong. Grades 2, 5, you have 0%, 6%. Same with grade 3, 6%. So we have mixed results. We'll talk about some of the actions we're taking in a little bit, but that's what we're measuring. We're measured by with the IEP and what we report to the state. If you look at it broken out by students, all students, English language learners and students with disabilities, this is how we break it out in the IEP too because of our subgroup issues we've had in the past. You'll see about 50-50 of our overall kids were at benchmark or below in the September benchmark. And overall, we've gone down a little bit, 46% of all students at benchmark and 54% of students below benchmark. In ELL, it's gone up a little bit, and there's some growth, whereas in the September benchmark, there was 14% of the students that were at benchmark, in the January benchmark, 18%. So some good growth there in one of our subgroups, a key area where we focus a lot of attention on. Students with disabilities, it's just about the same, 8% in September, 7% now. At benchmark as measured by DIBELS. Now, DIBELS isn't the end-all be-all measure necessarily, but it's the basic early literacy skills, and it's a measure we use. So it's important, and we're keeping our eye on it, so we'll talk more about that as we go. This year, a big piece of our first initiative with the EIP has been the implementation of National Geographic Reach for Reading and continuing implementation of our My Math program. One of the tricks and one of the things we have to spend a lot of time on is integrating these programs in a model into units and be a big focus of our horizontal teams, our grade level teams. And it's taken longer than I expected for us to be able to do that work, but I'm happy to say that I feel like we've gotten some good momentum going. We're doing some good work as grade level teams. It's not, I had made some assumptions about when we come together, and this is the work you do. We had to do some foundational PD and some other things to get those teams really effective in planning. And I think some of the growth you see in some grade levels are some teams that were able to work a little bit more in collaboration together and had some good growth. So our next big task to do as a district, as a West Street school, is to develop those units at each level, including the curriculum-based measures that go with it, so we can measure performance. So instead of relying on a DIBELS per se, is a measure, how about the Unit 1 assessment based on the unit we develop, or the Unit 2, things like that, where we can then go back and reteach as skills are needed, and we can also benchmark our progress and performance. Our science standards, we're about to, as a state, go forward with the next generation science standards. We need to implement that more fidelity. I'd say science is living better at grades 4 and 5, where the MCAS test is grade 5, but it's an area we need to continue to look at, and so we have some ideas in the schedule next year to show up some time. But we have to do that curriculum work with it. And social studies, I think we've had some good exposure with National Geographic, but the standards are lacking. And just because you're reading about a story in another country doesn't mean it's the same kind of standard and the skill you have to have in social studies. So those are areas, all areas that we need to continue to work and improve on. Our multi-tier system support, MTSS is the acronym. You know, there's a lot of acronyms as we go through. We're using Lively Letters, Foundations in Wilson, and Literacy. We utilize each. They're very effective, I think, in the lower grades, the primary grades, but we need additional target intervention for the 3 to 5. One of our challenges at West Street School, and I think it's a you know, a lot of schools struggle with this, is we have an issue where we have a lot of kids need intervention, more than typical. Traditionally, they say 80% of your kids don't need intervention, 15% need some intervention, 5% need a lot of intervention. When we look at our data, we see a lot more kids need intervention than that. So it's an issue we need to figure out what to do. We've been looking at different models, and we can talk a little bit about that in a minute also. This year we spent a lot of time in our ESL curriculum, getting kids in front of ESL teachers and doing that curriculum. You hear a lot of ELL students are the ones that go to ESL. That's actually the subject they take. It's something we're still working on because English as a second language is its own curriculum. It's not ELA, it's not the ELA curriculum necessarily. So we've done a better job getting kids in front of the right people, especially the kids are level 1, 2, and 3. But there's more work to be done curriculum-wise at West Street School in the district. We spent a lot of time on these collaboration teams, and we're talking a lot about it. Well, we've scaled back some of what they do, and we're focusing on doing 3 things well. One is common unit planning and working on how to do that well. We're working on, when we look at student data, a protocol called Stoplight Highlight, so we can look at data and take action from it. And when we look at student work, we're using something called the tuning protocol. I had kind of assumed some things when I came in and had a lot of protocols and different things you can choose from this menu of protocols, and it was too much. And so as a staff and as a leadership team, we've scaled back. We've scaled back. And so we're trying to get good at these things first, and then increase our frequency of meetings. Part of the change lever for our district and our school is going to be more of these collaboration meetings. That's where a lot of that good work has to happen. So we need to get good at it before we increase and make it a problem. We need to increase independent reading within the school day and at home. One of the things I think we find as a leadership team is that there's not enough kids reading independently. If you're going to get better, it's something you got to practice. So that's something we need to keep working on. We'll talk about some of our initiatives we work with the community on, but it's something all parents, I encourage you at home and in school with teachers. We're trying to get silent sustained reading and other times to practice that. We will improve our multi-year system to support social, emotional learning, and behavioral outcomes. We've added some interventions this year, things like check-in, check-out, things like our buddy classrooms, our buddy program. We got a few different things going, but we have a lot of needy kids in this town, as you know. So we need to figure out more support for that, and even at a Tier 1 level, a universal thing for kids. It probably makes sense during the day to have more teaching and learning on social, emotional things, self-esteem especially. Our instructional leadership team now meets weekly, so the teachers at each grade level and a special ed person, plus our folks that are here. So that's something we do every week now. That's something we started off doing bi-weekly, so we're doing that to plan and monitor, and I'm happy to say there's been some really good high-level conversations looking at the future and what we're going to do. One of the big initiatives we're looking at right now for next year is doing more flexible grouping across the grade levels, not just in the advanced program, but trying to figure out ways to move kids and have accountability for teachers to move kids, keep them where they are and move them up. As you saw from the Dibble scores, some kids have slipped in our benchmark. The more we can get kids in the right grouping and give them what they need, it's better. And we know that just because you're strong in literacy doesn't mean you're strong in numeracy and math. So let's figure out what each kid needs. So bigger groups maybe, with the kids who are strong, and the core instruction is small groups for other kids. So there's some things we're looking at and piloting and talking about right now. So that's our first standard. For our second objective, we've touched on some of these same kind of things. Our school improvement plan goal was to have each staff member serve on at least one horizontal and one vertical collaboration team, which utilize best practice common protocols and are focused on raising student achievement through a collaborative inquiry cycle and school improvement processes. I have come from different schools in the past, and one of the schools was connected to a healthcare system where quality improvement is a big initiative, and looking at data and trying to take action on that data. And so we're looking at not just at student achievement, but in school improvement in general, and have some other teams going. So every staff person is at least on one vertical team, that's across grade levels, across the school. Our current teams are the instructional leadership team, library advisory committee, our PBIS team, our student-based support team, and our technology team. We've had some other teams, but those are the ones that are strong right now. And we're focused on quality improvement in all areas of school functioning from the ground up. Instead of waiting for somebody else to come and say, hey, fix this, we want the staff on the ground to say, we want to improve this area of our school culture, our school life. And we've had some good progress with that. Our horizontal teams are grade level teams. They meet once currently with one extended meeting a month. It's an area we need to increase the frequency. So one time's not enough. So we need to have that more often. We have to figure out how to do that well. It's something that we're focused on, and more to come on that. The real trick with all quality improvement, I think, is we have to embed it down to the teacher level, into the practice every day. So for example, ANET, we do reteach plans after assessments to address student learning issues against the standard, that we reassess their progress. We need to change it from a practice that we do once that ANET test is given to it's a daily practice. I look in my classroom, I see if the kids learned it or didn't learn it, and I take action. The kids didn't seem to get it, I got to spend more time on it, or I need to spend this time with the group that didn't get it, things like that. So we need to embed that in daily practice, and some teachers are doing a great job leading that, and some we need to keep working on. So, our third objective in our school improvement plan at the AIP is that school administration will provide written feedback from unannounced observations to each teacher this year with an aggregate of 5 per week per administrator supporting educator evaluation fidelity. So I can report that we're up to date on the actual paperwork of the process, but we have not been getting into 5 per week. There's a lot of things that have come up and got in the way. There's some things we got to figure out how to do. That's still a goal. It's something I think is doable, but we're not quite there with 5 a week per person. But we are doing the educator evaluation process with fidelity. We just finished the formative assessments with our non-PTS teachers, so our teachers in the first 3 years. So we gave them feedback on their evidence and what they're doing against the DESE rubrics. It's an area to continue training staff and their understanding of the evaluation rubric and processes. So that's something we need to keep working on. But that's going to be part of the change process, just holding people accountable and do what you have to do. Through our partnership with Focus on Results, our faculty has adopted close reading and vocabulary development strategies. There's 2 things called 1 7-step, 1 2 5 5. we'll talk about in a minute, to implement for every classroom and with every student every day. Brett Bishop, who I know you've seen before, has done a great job working with our ILT team and coaching myself and Stacy to really embed these practices so people who have kids in West Street, hopefully you've seen evidence of close reading at home, or your kids have talked about it, and hopefully they're going to use it on their MCAS test, because we know if they use it, they're going to do better. Our ELL and SPED departments have begun meeting to develop action plans and curriculum to narrow the achievement gap issues. And we've done some training specifically in collaborative problem solving, which is a good evidence-based intervention model with them. We did some training with National Geographic. We have more coming in the spring. And we're looking at doing some other PD in the future with a turnaround group in our DSAC and standards-based best practices, differentiation, effective collaboration, and some other PD. We have to do some more training if we expect people to change their outcomes. So these pictures right here are looking at vocab 255. These are staff engaged in professional development. It's just one of the models we use for vocabulary. As you know, we have a high English language learner population. We need to spend a lot of time on vocabulary if we expect kids to be able to follow along with the curriculum. So we use these strategies every day in every classroom, and hopefully when your kids come home, if you have kids at West Street School, you're going to hear about different vocab. They're going to tell you about words they learn and different ways they do it. It looks different in different grade levels, but the two we've adopted is 255 and 7-step. Close reading, this is an example of a graphic we use with the kids to teach them close reading. Some grade levels have less, so first grade doesn't have as many symbols they use when kids read. But the trick for this is to read a passage or select a piece of text multiple times so you can get better understanding, better reading comprehension. So, and I didn't know much about close reading coming here, and it's pretty impressive to see kids who you wouldn't expect to be able to really wrestle with a text and give you good information that if they did it once, it wouldn't happen. But it's a good strategy, and it's a strategy we've adopted at all of our elementary and middle and high school. I know not Eastford Road necessarily because the kids are so young, but I know Charlton Street in the middle high school also use close reading because it's an effective strategy. Our last school improvement plan tied to the AIP was that teachers will provide consistent daily homework for students, including explicit instruction to families on how to support completion and learning with an emphasis on reading logs and our best practices of vocabulary development and close reading. So we've put an emphasis on providing helpful information for families when we can, so at parent lunches, at our holiday concert, at any events we can touch parents, our coffees, to encourage close reading specifically and reading at home. And we've partnered with the Worcester Sharks for the Reading at School program, which is a reading log and some incentives for kids to be part of. They just came, the Shark just came. I don't know if you heard about that, but it was a nice event. And we appreciate the Worcester Sharks for doing that. We've partnered with the Park Rangers for ice safety this year. That was a cool thing. We got all the kids involved with that. They're going to come in the future also. It's nice to have that connection, especially with the Ranger Station being so close to West Street School. Our family liaison is instrumental in communicating with our primarily Spanish-speaking parents and guardians. That's been huge. I can't emphasize enough how hard that is, that communication with that. So Michelle Ortiz, thank you. It's a big deal. And under her auspices and through some other things, we've done food drives at Thanksgiving, clothing drives in winter, backpacks for our kids with New Vision Church. They came. So it's nice to have community involvement. And of course, there's room for more. And we've been holding around attendance and the attendance policy. We've been holding meetings with families for those issues. We filed some with the juvenile court for attendance and child is requiring assistance. It's a tricky policy. It's something a lot of families are struggling with attendance, and with our achievement gaps, we've been towing the line, but it's definitely a challenge. We recently had our successful Making Connections family night. And it was our literacy and math night. It was well attended. In the future, I'd like to see more events, obviously, at our school. It'd be nice to have grade levels own different things, like science fairs, spelling bees, things like that. So we've talked about it. It's something we want to take action on in the future. First grade did a great How to Help Your Child with Homework event in December. It wasn't well attended necessarily, but it was good content. I appreciate their efforts. And I think the people that did come did get something valuable from that. We have about 700 volunteer hours so far at West Street School. Our goal is for 1,000 this year. So, we're on track. It's tricky. We had more in the beginning of the year than now. We've put out to Worcester State, Quinsigamond, some other places to get some volunteers. So hopefully we're going to get some more people. A couple issues we're still struggling with, though, is that a lot of phone numbers for families we need to contact, we can't get a hold of. The phone numbers on record don't work. So that's an issue. And a focus of our educator evaluation tool is two-way communication. So we expect teachers to be reaching out to families, and we want your feedback and your information back to us. So please reach out to us, though, if you're feeling like that's an issue for you, and we expect the teachers to connect. It's an important piece of our job, be working with families. The last thing, for this one, it's a tricky thing in coming new to Southbridge. I think we need to increase our expectations and involvement with families. Achievement is both effective learning at school and at home, and especially high expectations, and a lot of families do have it, but we need to get more. It's been great to partner with the PTO and the SPIRA to talk about these things, but we need to do more. And I don't know the solution for that, but I know it's an issue. And if we want to change achievement, we have to change both expectations in school and at home. So, I look for feedback and ideas around that. So here's a couple little pictures of some things, the Reading is Cool Night, Making Connections, Reading is Cool program and our Making Connections Night. Another piece of data, seeing some good stuff happen. And I know people that come to West Street School and have been there, they've seen, we're a good little school, we got a lot of things to do, but we've got some good staff and some good people, and we're starting to get to the meaningful work that's going to change achievement. So I have one data point also that I wanted to bring up and show, if it will open up for me. On our, yes, I would like to open it. So this is our ANET results as of A2. We have taken A3. I just don't have the data chopped up like this. And looking at our MCAS, predictive MCAS scores in our grade levels, this is just 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in school overall. You see there's disparity in the different grade levels. In 4th grade, we're doing pretty well. We're above the network in a lot of ways, and the teachers have done a good job collaborating and unpacking standards to get us there. In 3rd grade, we have 37% of the kids trending as proficient. This is not, we don't know if it's going to stay like this, but based on what the ANET scores were. In the 5th grade, we have a much lower number at 22%. So, that's data to look at. There's things to do. The teachers are wrestling with it. They're doing their protocols. The teachers have access to this and their ANET. They have access to the DIBELS. Those are the tools we're using, plus the state MCAS Edwin system to figure out where kids are strong and what we need to do. So that's just a piece of data that's predictive, looking at what this year's might look like. With A3 coming out, when this data is updated, hopefully we see stronger in all grades, but that's where we're at. So I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. And I want to acknowledge Ms. Burgess. So thank you she's the assistant principal at West Street School, so thank you for being here. So at this time, I'll open the floor to any of the school committee members if anybody has any particular question for Mr. Reagan at this point.
I'll let Marie and Stacy pop in
Silent
too.
bunch.
These guys are, I have a good team. We're lucky at West Street, so.
Okay, all right, we'll start with Mr. Olivo.
Sure.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Mr. Regan, thank you for coming out tonight. I have a couple questions in regards to the National Geographic Reach for Reading curriculum, and I know that it is a new curriculum. So what I would like to know is what is the consistency of the teachers with this new program? How is it working throughout the grades, starting with 1st grade? And I mean,
Sure.
The test scores are showing, a
So
decrease,
I'd be glad to answer that. That's a good question. I think one of the challenges we had is that the National Geographic is a curriculum tool, and we use it in our curriculum, but it's not the whole curriculum. And one of the challenges we have for teachers, and it's not easy to be a teacher, figuring out, I need to get the kids towards certain standards, certain skills and knowledge they need to have to go, for example, from grade 1 to grade 2 successfully, or grade 2 to grade 3, and then grade 3 get measured on the MCAS. We adopted National Geographic mid-year. I don't think the teachers have processed it and had enough fluency with it yet to really make the gains they need to do. And even then, I don't think National Geographic is the only tool. We have a lot of resources. Southbridge has invested in a lot of things at West Street School that we don't want to throw out necessarily. So we need to actually work on planning our units from standards and using the tools we have, including the big one of National Geographic, but not the only one. The best parts of National Geographic, I think, are the anthology itself and how it uses a lot of culture, a lot of nonfiction text. So it's lined to the Common Core well. But as a school, we need to spend time building those units that aren't just National Geographic and actually pushing the kids on what their needs are, because if National Geographic's not accessible to a kid, you got to figure out whatever's going to work. So we're spending that time in those collaboration meetings. That's why one time a week is not enough, I think. So I'd say overall, teachers like what it is, what we need to get away from is you can't open the book and just teach from it. It is, you have to pick and choose because the whole curriculum itself, the tool itself, is too big. You can't cover it all in a year anyways. So how do you go deep enough for our kids to be successful, not just cover? So that's the challenge we're going through.
So in your opinion, is this why we're seeing the gaps? Because, I mean, they're having to dive so deep and then they're having to supplement with other
I don't think so. I think it's a tough cycle K-12, and you have a lot of kids that come in without the skills they need, and it's going to take a while to work that out. I think our interventions are somewhere we need to spend more time, so the foundations and the lower grade levels, lively letters, which focuses on the letter recognition, foundations, which is phonics, and Wilson, which is more whole language, might not be enough intervention. And we have some folks that do some different things, but I think we might need to flesh out our interventions, and I think we need to improve our core instruction. And I think that's where the educator evaluation, holding people accountable, is going to be key. So we're working through that. I can say that some grade levels are doing a really good job with it, and we have some grade levels we need to keep working.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And along that lines as well, we're trying to cater to all students, and then we see that there's a difficulty with some of the ELL learners. What about those who are receiving the material very well?
Yep.
And are they being held back, or is there anything that they're using to kind of pull them forward a little bit, I guess?
So our ELL kids, I think it's a tricky thing because you have kids that come from all over different levels. So we have some ELL kids who were born in Southbridge, and that they're not making progress at third grade. It's probably more than just ELL, and we've seen that issue. We've looked into maybe some disabilities with certain kids, things like that we didn't necessarily recognize because we said they're still learning English. We have other kids who come, from especially Puerto Rico, that come off and they hit the ground running. They don't have the English skills, but they have that content skills. You give them the language skills, they grow really fast. So it's hard to say exactly what each kid is. I think overall, we need to do English as a second language as a specific skill. It's not ELA, and I think one of the things we struggled in the past was when the kids come out of the classroom, are they just doing the curriculum with another teacher? They don't need ELA curriculum right now. They need English as a second language so that they can access as fast as they can when they get the English skills our other curriculum. And we're still working through how does that look. And at the early grade levels, I wish I could say that there's a right answer. There's not, because I know some of my teachers, if I left the kids in there all day, they'd grow anyways.
Right.
In other places, it's not the case, in fifth grade maybe, or in high school, things like that. So I think we're still working through what that is. We're working on our ESL curriculum, what that looks like, and how to support support kids in classrooms. We have right now, I think, 16 teachers that are SEI certified. They call it Sheltered English Immersion. Some of the best practices, what to do with kids for ELL, but it helps all kids. It's just like special education. There's nothing special. It's what can help any kid if you could. We're using those strategies with those kids, and hopefully you're going to see gains with our ELL. I think our ELL this year, we haven't had our access scores. We just did the testing. I'm confident that those will grow compared to last year, because last year we didn't have any growth. I think it's going to grow. I don't think it's going to be the growth that we'd all want, but I do think it's going to grow. And we've been having the right conversations about what to do. We just got to figure out the time to do it next. We're in a process of change. We're kind of building the plane as we're flying it too. So.
I have one more question.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the National Geographic training, where do we stand with teachers trained, and how is it being implemented, or how is it being shared with the rest of the faculty?
Sure. Well, these guys are the ones that do better training than I do, so I'll let you guys talk to that.
Sure. So when it first arrived back in October, we had a full district, all the elementary schools together received a full day of training. And then in November, we had a separate special training for the ELL teachers and the special education teachers. They attended together because they use a companion program called REACH. That goes along with the Reach for Reading program. The kids use the same anthology, but the teacher's manual has that differentiation in it for them. And then in December, we had a PD day on the vocabulary strategies that go along with the program. And we're looking to invite National Geographic back now in the spring. Everybody is pretty much either in their fourth unit or almost in their fourth unit of National Geographic. So we're going to be inviting them to come back in and do a check-in with us to see exactly where we stand.
Awesome.
With the goal, next year, we hopefully go through Unit 8 next year. So we're through Unit 4 this year because how we started. Next year we'll be farther through. So.
Yeah, we didn't start at the beginning of the year.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else?
Good.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Page.
Through you, Madam Chair. So you said something about the need to increase independent reading within the school day and at home.
You got it.
Can you describe the specific strategies as to how you're planning on implementing that, particularly emphasizing
Sure.
at home?
Well, so I can tell you at school, there's something called silent sustained reading. We're trying to make that more universal practice in our day so that there's time where kids are independently reading on their own without distraction. At home, we've done a lot of kind of flyers at home, why it makes sense to read with your kid. So for example, there was one that I just have that hasn't been sent home yet. It says something about, if you don't read with your kids, this is how many words your kids will be exposed to. If you read with your kid 5 minutes a night, they'll be exposed to X number of words in a week, in a year. This is what it's going to look like. If you read for 20 minutes a night, they're going to be exposed to 1.8 million words over this amount of time period. So a lot of it is kind of persuasion, saying, we're in this together. We need you to, we need everybody to step up. And we know that if you are literate, you have access to anything in education. But if you don't ever achieve that literacy, school is always going to be hard. So we need to spend time. And we've been doing it at events, giving it to families, but it's not the lever that I think is enough. And I think we need to do more on trying to get reading at home. That's the reading we use right now is that the log with the Worcester Sharks. So Worcester Sharks has a reading log. Kids complete X number of books. They get an incentive to go to a game, or they get other prizes, dues and things like that. Now, I'm not relying on the Worcester Sharks to change our school, but we'll take whatever it is. Pawtucket Red Sox do a similar kind of thing. Other kind of groups just to incentivize reading. And I think this is universal for all elementary schools. This is not a Southbridge issue. The more you read, the better off you are long term. And higher ed too. Kids who learn how to read by second grade are going to have a much higher university success rate than kids who don't. So we want to get them early. I know that's what the work that Mary Scripsack at Eastford Road, get the kids as literate as you can. Coming up to us, we'll be better off. And I think in time, if we can get kids early up, it'd be great. That's why we're doing so much in pre-K and preschool now on literacy, whereas when I was a kid, it was playtime. So a lot of work to be done, but I think the more we can ask families to do it, and I've asked teachers to be very explicit. Your homework tonight is reading plus. It is, this plus.
And so, a quick follow-up to that. I mean, do you have a mechanism of tracking to see if it's effective? Because you're putting a lot of effort into
Well,
it.
I think that's the dibbles. I think that's the other kind of measures. So I don't think we're having the results that we need. I wouldn't say, a short term is going to be a change, but hopefully over time you're to sustain gains by doing this over and over and over and starting younger and younger and younger. So.
Are you all set, Dr. Page?
I think so.
Okay. Mrs. Comgan?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Regan. My first question is on the need to develop units at each level, including the curriculum-based measures to measure performance and progress. Have you started doing that right now? If so, how are you developing the units at each level?
Very slowly. We are. One of the big changes that actually happened is that we used to let grade level teams plan in their room with their grade level leader. And we decided that wasn't, we weren't getting the bang we wanted right yet, so now we all plan in the library together with our instructional coaches and administration, and we're using that time, and we've had some good conversations, but it's pretty recent. I want to say we've been doing that, 6 weeks, not even, with a lot of snow days in there. So it's going to be work over the summer, and it's going to be work that's ongoing, because you can't do it once and you're done. Because after you implement a unit of study, you take the data, how the kids did, and you adjust it for the next year, and you keep adjusting. And we have to do that with Charlton Street, because we're the same kind of school, to be as effective as possible. The trick there, too, is that's the science of the teaching, that's what we expect kids to be able to do, the outcomes in that unit. The art of it is how the teacher then presents those lessons and presents their own spin on it. And that's where we've done some of that through the evaluation process, but it'd be nice when we get more curriculum and our curriculum settled, it'll be a lot easier to reinforce what we expect for that science of the curriculum.
Thank you. My next question was the ELL, ESL instruction. You had mentioned that it was its own curriculum.
It is.
What, and I don't know if it can be you through your school or maybe to the superintendent, what are we doing in regards to this curriculum? Could you just explain it a little bit?
I can take a quick thing, I'll pass it to Cheryl quickly, but I can tell you that we've been very clear at West Street School with our ESL teachers. Their job is the 4 domains of speaking, listening, reading, and writing, and there's certain standards that the kids need to have in English, not English language arts necessarily. And Cheryl, I'll pass it to you.
Sure. So one of the district goals this year is to actually write the ELL curriculum, and that work group has been started, and they are working, I think, over the next 4 to 6 weeks to create that curriculum, then implement it, and then revise it for next year.
So that makes sense why the numbers are poor, because we don't have the curriculum as of yet.
I think it's more than just the curriculum. I think there's some different types of instruction going on in different ESL classrooms or ELL classrooms. So without a unifying curriculum or a unifying resource, then you do find different strengths in different classes, but you don't have a district-wide strength in your ELL program.
I think individually kids too, I think you're going to look at, sometimes we have teachers say to kids, this kid's going to be fine staying in the classroom, so we're going to let the family make the decision. So we had a lot of families this year make the decision whether my kid's going to be in the ESL classroom or they're going to be fully immersed. And that's something that was new, I think, or it seemed new, because there were so many people that we talked to about it. So it's a decision from the family too on how you want your child to be educated in that area. So.
Thank you. And another question on that same page, the need to improve the social, emotional learning and behavioral outcomes.
Yep.
And my question is kind of also pertaining to budget around that question. Last year, we had added the position of assistant principal to both Charlton Street
Yep.
and West Street schools to deal with these disciplinary issues, as
Sure.
well as the evaluation process and observation of the staff.
Yep.
How do we think this is working?
So I'll say
right
thank
now?
God for that, because I don't know how people did it before, honestly. Stacy and I share the responsibilities of administrator so she can become a principal. And so I'd say we do spend a lot of time with behavior, but it's not your average kid's behavior. We have some really needy kids, and it's those needy kids where we spend a lot of time with, and guidance counselors spend time with, and other folks. When I say we need to improve our social emotional curriculum, it's more the tier 1, all kids. And we have a lot of kids that are impacted by a lot of things in Southbridge. So we're trying to build some skills around self-esteem, how to access resources, how do you have social skills, those kind of things. And it's tough to carve time out in the day to do that, I realize. But there are opportunities, especially in a morning meeting, to really build your learning community. And the 15 minutes you spend on that, I found in my career, pays off in spades, and it goes a long way for all kids. So that's a tier 1 kind of thing. And then we need to improve our tier 2, tier 3 options for those kids who need more. And that's where the guidance counselor came in before the assistant principal. The guidance counselor, there really wasn't any tier 2 interventions. Now there are. The one big one we spent a lot of time on this year is check in, check out. Those are kids who go to an adult in the morning and the afternoon just to check in, see how last night was. Do you have your homework ready? How's your day looking? Let's talk. Let's plan. Let's strategize. End of the day, same thing. It goes a long way. So right now I think we have about 10 kids in that program. There are more that need it. And we've got our lunch bunch group still, and we've got other things that, back when the guidance counselor was doing discipline, they weren't able to get to those things. So I think it's important, but we still need to continue to grow in all those areas. So my opinion, anyway.
That's great, thank you. I think that's good that we're focusing on the students and their needs. Another question, thank you, through you. On the objective 2, all staff are assigned to teams, the vertical teams,
Got it.
ILT, Library Advisory Committee, PBIS team. Could you just explain a little bit about what the teams do?
Sure. So they also meet once a week. Actually, I'm sorry, once every other week in a rotation, so twice a month. And they're really doing that quality improvement process, doing needs assessment. So like the library committee is headed by the librarian, so we have I didn't include all the teams. We have a wellness team, we have an events team, we have other things too. Where staff were able to choose kind of where do I want to spend my time improving, not just in the classroom. And so they spend time, there's some outside folks on it, so like the library team has the librarian from Jacobs Library come, things like that. Our wellness team, it feeds up to the district wellness team, things like that. So everybody was able to choose where they were. A lot of people chose more than one because they wanted to be involved in multiple areas. So I think it's different depending on the team, but the same idea of the quality improvement cycle. You assess where you are, you action plan, and you try improvements, and then you assess did that work or not, and you keep that process going over time. Hopefully that we're improving our school, not just in the classrooms, but overall. Some of the teams have existed, like PBIS is not new, but looking at it and having it more participation is, and then we have a bigger team now and things like that. So To be honest, I think I overshot it a little bit, spending so much time with the vertical teams because we're still working so much on our horizontal teams. So if I could do anything again, I might not scale up the vertical teams as large as I did and set that goal, and just let people kind of volunteer for it instead of compel them, but I did compel everybody to be part of one this year. We'll see next year how we're going to do that. So.
Thank you. And then more of a comment. I didn't have the opportunity to attend your last family night, but I heard rave reviews from my husband about that you hit a home run, hit it out of the park, and he mentioned that what was said that you had wanted to do more family nights, but from the people that attended that I have spoken to, they really enjoyed that night. They thought it was well done. So
No,
I
I
just wanted
appreciate
to
that.
comment you and your staff on that.
Yeah, I think if we could figure out what grade levels own which one and make it a tradition, that's how you keep it a stick. So 5th grade's the spelling bee or the geography bee, and 4th grade's the science fair. That's the kind of way we can try to make it sustaining. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mrs. Quinney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Regan. As Ms. Congdon had said, talking about that ESL delivery and how that's done,
Yep.
my question would be, do you feel that the way that we're identifying English language learners, especially at the lower grades, is effectively identifying
Sure.
true English language learners, or if it's identifying children who have not yet attained the ability to read
Yep.
or write?
I think we've done a better job this year figuring that system out. And I'd say that Shelley, Araceli Skada, our ELL IRS, has built a lot of systems around that at the early grade levels that are better. So we're seeing less kids that have been I think we're seeing less over-identification. Because the domains are in reading, writing, listening, and speaking, there are kids developmentally that struggle with that. So we need to figure out who needs what and do that. I think the ESL teachers are more adept this year with Shelley on identifying those kids who they can flip out, they call it, which is they're literally English proficient, but they can still be in a classroom. We take them out of the program. Their parents have chosen, we're going to take my child out of the program. We'll also use the WAP test when kids come in. So kid moves in. We have a lot of move-ins, a lot of transitional kids. Kids that have come in that are identified as English language learners from their home language survey, from their families, we test them to see where they stand at that point in time and determine services. And that's something I don't know that was universally happening. I might be speaking, but I don't think so, right? I don't think so. We're doing a much better job of that now.
Well, I
So-
think the home language survey is, I've gotten them repeatedly. One of the questions is, does anyone in your family speak another language?
Yep.
Well, that could be great-grandma who
Right, you
doesn't
got
talk
it.
to me sitting in
That's
the
a pretty
corner.
wide open question. Absolutely. No, I'm with it.
And
That's where the testing comes in, I think, when you actually have to do the testing with the kid and say, where are their skills?
I think my challenge with the ESL program is that kids are getting pulled out of those core subjects
Yep.
that we're expecting them to meet standards in, and we need to find a better
It's
balance.
a catch-22. I wish I
in-
knew what the answer is. I think the state is at odds with how we do it. And I think when the ballot initiative happened in 2002, I don't think it was well thought out what that model is going to look like. I think it's a tough balance. I don't know what the right answer is, because I have some teachers that I know if I kept the kid in the class, they would make progress. But we're trying to do the right thing based on what the state recommendations are. And so it's tough. And I can't say that every decision is something that I really believe in, but it's based on what the state says we're going to do.
And
So
in
it's
fairness,
tough.
I did ask the state if they had another standard to test children that wasn't the Uyghur, and the answer was no.
No,
We should look into
I know.
that.
It's tricky, yeah.
So I also wanted to touch on the social emotional learning.
Sure.
One of the things that came out of the Wellness Advisory Committee at the last meeting was that we used to have health teachers at the elementary school, and it seems that in a lot of different places that kind of keeps coming
Sure.
up regarding making healthy choices,
Yep.
healthy emotional and physical choices, nutrition, all that sort of stuff. So that might be something that we need to look into.
I agree. I also think we have other needs too. It's tricky. That's where I think if we could fold it in, at least for the short term, with the classroom teachers and give them a curriculum, which is not very expensive in the scheme of things compared to other items we look at. We're looking maybe $4,000 or $5,000 a school,
Yep.
compared to our $25 million budget. It might not be that bad. Whereas personnel is expensive, and I would argue at West Street School, we have a bigger need. Not that we don't need a health teacher, which we do. And Mr. Yakubian does a good job with what he can do. I think our technology in STEM would be more of an issue. I think in the short term with Park and just our need for science. And if you're going to get a job out there, not you need wellness, you do, but you also need that science. So it's hard to say, let's weigh which one's more important. But we have needs in a lot of areas, and those are two big ones, for sure.
Close reading, I had never heard of close reading, but
That's a problem if you haven't heard of it.
no. My children have taught me a great deal about close reading
Oh, good.
in the meantime.
That's what I wanted to hear. So.
And I've seen it in action when I've volunteered in my kids' classrooms, and it's amazing to see how that kind of process laid out specifically really guides kids through, and then they can sit and read on their own and understand.
Yep.
You also had said that Dibbles isn't the end-all, be-all.
It's not.
And I have a personal bias against Dibbles.
Sure.
Given the high weight of oral reading fluency.
Yep, exactly.
As-
We might spend too much time with oral reading fluency instead of other skills. I agree with you.
Yes. Given that I don't think children read to learn how to read out loud quickly, and reading quickly does not necessarily translate well into
The
reading
stopwatch,
comprehension.
is there anxiety, if you have anxiety? No, I hear you. Yep.
So I was wondering if we are looking into any other ways, I know you said like unit testing in order to level kids, and I think that that would be helpful for parents. When you go to buy books on Scholastic,
Yep.
you don't know what level your kid is. They got 70 words on their Dibbles, but that doesn't translate to,
Yep.
I should be looking at books in this area.
There are other reading assessments we're looking at and we've used in the past. DRA is one we've looked at. I think the MAP testing will have some components of literacy that will help level groups. The unit tests will be a big measure, and I think the reason why I prefer that is that it's the teachers working with each other and really, how do we move this kid rather than relying on an outside, score to say, what am I going to do? So there are some other tools. There's some other tools we use in intervention to measure kids' progress monitoring. It's not just Dibbles necessarily. A lot of it is Dibbles, though. So is there any other thing you want to add? Go ahead.
They use a test called the Bader in first and second grade along with the Dibbles, so they don't just rely on the Dibbles scores, although that's what we report per the AIP, but we also use that. We've used the DRA and the DRP in addition because it gives you some piece of comprehension, which is really more important than speed of reading.
I wholly concur. And then the graph that you were able to share with us?
This one right here?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Do you have any cohort data regarding how those children scored in third grade, those fourth grade kids?
I think we could pull it out. I don't
Versus
have
the
it.
fourth
I don't
grade
have it
and
at
fifth
hand, and we haven't processed it necessarily. But I think we could have that through ANET.
Because I think having that comparison to see that these particular group of kids have continued to accelerate
Right.
as opposed to have kind of gone up and gone downwards.
Or when the
separate-
acceleration happens. No, I think
Exactly.
that could be valuable. I agree with you. We've been able to work pretty well with ANET on some different data things. I think the trick for us is one time a meeting a week to do all these different things is not enough. So, and the trick for me is also not to have it rest at our level, the administration level, where we're talking about these things and not at the teacher level. So trying to make it real for teachers to actually take action on is tricky. I think that would be a good way to chop up that data and look at data. I think we just need more data fluent. And I've struggled personally in getting access to some of it, not access to the data, but spending the time to really,
Unpack
wrestle
it.
with it.
Yep.
Because we have so many things on the plate, as you guys know. So.
I know a lot about kids. And then, obviously, I think when you look at that, and ANET, I am not a big fan of either, given that it compares us to the lowest performing districts in the state, which I
It
don't
does.
think, I think we need to set high expectations, and I don't think ANET is a high expectation per se.
I hear you.
But
Yep.
it's what we have,
Yep.
and based on that, it is very concerning to me to see that data for
Fifth grade?
fifth grade.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
And I know you said you're kind of unpacking the data and figuring out how we're moving from here.
So the flexible grouping idea fits with this. And our idea of being more dynamic with units and changing kids so the kids who may be in the red are in smaller groups more often for literacy instruction or math instruction. And then figuring out how do we give our support. I think one of our things with our RTI is that sometimes the time is inefficient. And the time it takes to transition kids, pick up kids from 3 different classrooms and go to a small group and do a 20-minute lesson, there's a lot of inefficiencies there. So what are we going to do about intervention? I think those red kids, it's about it's a core instruction issue, but it's also an intervention issue. And I think if we do go to more of a flexible grouping and flesh out that multi-tier system of support in interventions, not just Foundations, Lively Letters, and Wilson, we'll have more gains. So we're looking at some different programs and different things, and it's budget season. You guys, you got that hard work to deal with. I have some recommendations in there that I'm thinking that might be helpful for us that aren't that cost prohibitive, in my opinion. So hopefully that will be something we could target. So.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that's it, if you can believe it. Anybody else? Quick, take the floor before I talk again. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? If you don't mind, I had two just quick clarification questions. When you talked about flexible grouping, are you talking about flexible grouping within an individual classroom, or are you talking about mixing up the cohort as a whole in
We're
grade
talking
level?
right now at our leadership team is more the mixing up the cohort, not just in the classroom.
Okay.
We do that in the classroom already, and I think we're seeing that there are more persistent issues in class size because it's part of it. If we want to differentiate our instruction, we think that maybe there's a literacy teacher that might not be necessarily need the top group of kids. And we can put that person maybe with a yellow group and see if they can move the kids to green. And those are some of the things that teachers are kicking around right now. And Judy Knoyer is the one that has been thinking about these things, and she's got a lot of good ideas. So
Okay.
trying to do something to improve things. And so she's the one that kind of was the brainchild of that, but our leadership team, we're listening and we're trying, and there are lots of kinks. We've talked about other things. We've talked about having every adult in the building that has a certification teach a group of kids, small group of kids, 10 kids, and then you got to move the kids. Easier said than done when you do it on paper. So we're looking at innovative things because we know doing the same thing over and over is not going to change results. So.
That was the right answer, because in my own mind, things need to be shaken up.
I agree.
And it's not just shaking up the kids, it's shaking up and moving teachers around who could get stagnant in where they've
Right.
been in a long time.
It's not the place. I'm not trying to place blame anywhere either. I think it's been a lot of years and a lot of different things, and they've been exposed to a lot of things. One of the problems I think we've had at West Street is that we haven't stuck with anything. So we've got to kind of give some time and give some results. And the reason why I like the idea of the flexible grouping, it was from the ground up. It was from one of my strongest teachers saying, this would work. And, when you think about it, it could. There are kinks, though. It's not perfect. And we have other things we've got to work out.
Exactly. Sometimes success is just sticking to the plan. And you're
That's
right,
it.
we absolutely, every year, it's a new principal and it's a new initiative.
I think
and it's
that's
tough
how
on
the staff at
teachers.
West Street feel, is that there's been a lot of
Absolutely.
change. So.
Just another quick clarification on objective number 2, the need to embed, I think you said, I don't know if it's Q1 process?
QI,
Could you
quality
just say what-
improvement. Sorry,
quality
another
improvement?
acronym.
Okay.
Quality improvement cycle, data cycle, the whole idea of you're not done. You're always looking back at what we're doing. Can we do better? Let's try these actions from the ground up. Did it work? Did it not work? Keep it going.
Right,
Yep.
okay. And just 2 quick comments, that close reading is
Yeah,
awesome.
it is, yeah.
I have boys in the middle school, and they are utilizing that same technique, and I think it's something that they can carry with them for the rest of their lives.
I agree.
So I think that's great that that was introduced to them at such a young level, and then that'll just, like
Well, I
I
was
say,
a
carry
history
with
teacher by
them.
trade, and someday I want to be a history teacher again, and I know I'm going to steal that and take that with me
It's
wherever
awesome,
I go. So,
absolutely.
I'm with you.
And then finally, like Mrs. Congdon, my husband had attended your recent literacy and math
Yeah.
night with my daughter and raved reviews.
Good.
So thank you very much,
Yeah, no,
and to
thank
your
you.
staff for
Yeah, we had a lot of good
doing
volunteers that night. I appreciate it. It's tough, a lot of families and different things. So we had a lot of good people that came out, and I appreciate
Yeah, you made it
the team.
happen, so thank you
I
very
appreciate our
much.
team stepping up and people coming out. We had a lot of families that night. It was nice to see the turnout.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes I'm pointing the finger, but it's like we need everybody. We need all the families, not just the ones that can come. So that's
Absolutely.
however we do that. I'm open to ideas and what we got to do. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Regan. Thank you, Ms. Burgess, and
Thanks.
thank you, Ms. Murray. Thank you very much. Okay, so check the time. Okay, we're doing all right. Agenda item number 7, reports. We have the representative of the Student Advisory Committee who is not here. We have a huge, wonderful event taking place at our Southbridge Middle High School today for the arts, and I know that Mr. Voisert is an active participant in that, so he is respectfully excused from that this evening. So we'll move on to school committee reports. Our first one is Budget and Finance Subcommittee, and I'll turn that over to Dr. Page.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We had a meeting last night of the Budget and Finance Subcommittee. Basically, we went over the timelines and sort of activities that are associated with preparing the budget proposal from the superintendent's office to the school committee meeting of the whole for March 18th. Just a couple of highlights. The building-based budgets are still being built, and according to Superintendent Stanton, I think that was going to happen today. Is that correct? Those were due? Yep. There are some ongoing conversations with the town and potential other community institutions regarding alternatives for the location of the central office in Cole Ave. We had a discussion and a review of the utility bills associated with operating that building, and it seems like those are resources that are not very adequately being utilized, so we had some discussions about that, and so there will be some proposals and so forth coming forward in the future. As I said, the budget presentation to the Committee of the Whole will be on March 18th. And in general, the way the budgets are being constructed is really from the ground up at the building level in terms of what the principals and the superintendent and finance director believe are the resources that are needed in order to accomplish the district goals. And so that's sort of the philosophy of how the budget is being built. Mr. Osborne provided us with an updated budget to actual expenses with year-end projections. And while there are certain categories that are overexpended, there are some that are underexpended, and he and the superintendent are working on strategies in order to ensure that we land at the end of this year within target. And that's pretty much all I have as a summary. The minutes will be forthcoming as upon approval. And so that's all we have.
Very good.
We haven't scheduled another meeting because we wanted to wait and see what the sort of fallout or how things happen after the Committee of the Whole presentation, and then we'll schedule another meeting as appropriate after that. Okay? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Page. Next agenda item, negotiation and IBB subcommittees. Mrs. Quinney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The negotiations subcommittee has been meeting with SEIU Local 888. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 26th. The IBB subcommittee has been also meeting with the teachers, and we will meet tomorrow from 10 to 2 in room M100. And that is all.
Okay, thank you very much. And could you also please do Wellness Advisory Committee?
Certainly, thank you. The Wellness Advisory Committee met on February 26th. We discussed school-based wellness committees. Some are up and running, some are struggling to get up and running due to snow cancellations and rescheduling of multiple meetings. We discussed YRBS data and how the Wellness Advisory Committee envisions the district using that information in order to move forward and address some of the behaviors that were highlighted. Two of the largest concerning issues that came out of the YRBS were bullying is a big issue for kids right now, as well as depression. So we have children that feel bullied and depressed, and that is from last year's YRBS data. So looking at ways that we can better address that and meet those needs, as well as some professional development around bullying and identifying kids at risk for depression or some behavioral issues that might need some outside interventions. We discussed the school nutrition program, some challenges with that, including federal guidelines, portion sizes, the availability and access to fresh fruits and vegetables and freshly cooked foods at different buildings and the challenges to that. And our next meeting is, I believe, next month on the 2nd, but that has yet to be posted. When it is, I will bring that forward, but I think that is all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very good, thank you. And last, the Policy Subcommittee, I have a quick report from Mrs. McLaughlin, who chairs that subcommittee. The March 4th meeting was canceled, but the next Policy Subcommittee meeting will be held on April 1st at 6 p.m. The committee will resume review of the district policy manual and will also revisit 2 draft policies as requested at the last meeting. Moving on, we have the report of the Finance Director. Welcome, Mr. Osborne. Thank you.
Aside from the thunder that Dr. Page stole from me, having the Budget Finance Subcommittee is helpful. It gets a lot out and lets Dr. Page take a few items. I do want to share that we are continuing to review processes and procedures in the business office. You'll recall we have been looking at and addressing multiple payroll efficiency concerns in the past. We continue to follow through with those. Those were considered high priority items by the office and are most easily handled internally. So it's something we don't have to worry the schools about or the different offices. Today, however, we did begin a new accounts payable procedure to address some issues related to paying vendors via handoff issues, delays, things like that. From various levels. With multiple sites, we inevitably end up with handoff errors, things like that occur, and we want to be certain that we have all of the invoices, all of the payment information, that we know that product has been received at the various locations. So the department will begin reviewing and sharing an open purchase order report with the various locations on a monthly basis. And we will work collaboratively with those departments to address any payables issues and close those in a more timely manner.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, report of the superintendent. Welcome, Ms. Stanton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our highlight meeting with Plan Monitor Pat Williams occurred on February 25th. We shared our benchmark data and progress on many of the goals in the AIP. Much of what we shared is incorporated into our school-focused presentations, and so thank you to the principals and the schools for building those presentations and taking the time to come here to school committee and share them, and also answer the questions of the committee. We worked with Ms. Williams and Essie to revise our benchmarks, and the final revisions are being reviewed by our district leadership team. That happened today, and then our instructional resource specialists will be reviewing those revisions as well, and those will be presented to Essie, and those revisions will carry forward from this year to from now until the end of the year. And then the full revision will start also soon, so that we can have an early presentation to Essie for our 2015-2016 AIP, so we can hopefully hit the ground running without there being any break. I was in attendance at the SWEC board meeting on Friday, March 6th. I do have to report that the tuition increase proposal is of 17%, and that this was identified as necessary to correct a shortfall from the previous school year, in addition to providing fiscal sustainability for 2015 and 2016 school year. That's them calling to verify, in case anybody was, okay. New administrative oversight in both the director's office and the finance director's office at SWEC have provided insight into why those errors have occurred and why the tuition increase is necessary. And the board did agree to those increases. Finally, I had the pleasure of meeting with 2 community organizations over the past 2 weeks. I've met with Head Start. Thank you to that organization. I learned a lot about their programming and the extent that they are not just the preschool that we see at central office and enjoy so much. They also provide many social programs that we benefit from here in Southbridge. I also met with Aspira yesterday afternoon, enjoyed that conversation very much, and the leadership programming that they have on site in Southbridge for our students. I look forward to developing both of these community partnerships over the coming months. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stanton. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 8, school committee actions. Vote to approve the previously conditionally approved field trip to Italy from April 18th, 2015 through April 26th, 2015 for Southbridge Middle High School. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Quinney makes the motion. Do I have a second? Mrs. Congdon gives a second. Discussion. I know that Ms. Kamada is here this evening. I didn't know if you wanted to come up and do a quick... Okay, well, do it up there. That way we can hear you.
I just wanted to say thank you. And when I came to Southbridge, I love it here. I love the kids, I love the staff, and I'm hoping that the enrollment just keeps on going, and I'm seeing great things, so thank you.
So just a quick overview real quickly. I know that you're going to Italy.
Yep.
For the week, so that's April vacation.
Yep.
And I know that we've done all our homework behind the scenes, but all the documentation and the planning is done. We have everything. There's a
We have
folder
everything.
provided on the dais tonight.
And then more.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Kamada relative to this trip? Nope. All right, well, bon voyage.
Thank you so much.
And have a safe trip.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we just do, I probably shouldn't have said bon voyage until we formally approved it. So I just need a roll call vote, please, to approve this action.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes?
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
All yes.
Okay, thank you very much. The motion carries.
Bon voyage.
Bon voyage. Thank you. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. Letter A, superintendent search. As you recall, Mrs. McLaughlin had mentioned at our last meeting that she contacted 5 companies relative to our superintendent search. The update relative to her contacting those companies is as follows. We had 2 companies that submitted information. We also had 2 companies that declined to submit a proposal altogether, and we had 1 that never responded. So at this stage of the game, we're looking at 2 submitted proposals. One is local, one is from Illinois. And at this stage of the game, we kind of need to open it up to the school committee to see which way, how they would like to proceed. We have the option of having the chair invite those 2 companies that have submitted proposals and have them do a public presentation. We can have her look for more companies and, send out more RFPs, if you will, to see if we're looking for more information from additional companies. I don't know how the committee feels about this and which direction you'd like to go in, but right now we have 2. So I'm going to open the floor if anybody has any ideas or thoughts of how you would like to move forward relative to this. Yes, Mrs. Quinney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think if we have 2 companies who are willing to do the search for us, I think if we have some sort of a presentation, whether it's publicly or we get something emailed to us about what that looks like, have the opportunity to ask questions, if we're then satisfied with either one of those companies or feel like it meets the needs that we have, then I would recommend moving forward with that. And if we, after reviewing that information, if neither of those companies meet the needs that we feel that we have or would handle a search the way that we would like it done or can't meet our needs, then I would ask that the chair would open it up and look for more.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
How do people feel about the email presentation? Do you think it would be better to do it in public? I know that one of the companies, as I mentioned, is from Illinois, so I think one of the things that we would need to consider is whether or not we pay for them to come out. And do we have the money for that?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I believe that company has a local representative. They don't have to come from Illinois.
Okay. I'm not sure about that, so we can confirm that if that's the case.
I'm pretty sure about that.
Dr. Page, did you have your hand up? Yep.
I would just like to concur with my colleagues. I think it would be a good idea to have them come and actually present to us,
Okay.
if possible.
So I guess the other option would be, would they come to a regularly scheduled meeting, or would it be better to call a special meeting where that is the only item on the agenda? And we just focus in on that.
Madam Chair, my comment on that would be to get a rough idea of what would the length of the presentation be and how long we would think, and to get an idea of how long it would take to do that. If it would be a half an hour presentation each, then it might fit within the context of a meeting, but if it would be something more than that, then we may have to call a special meeting.
Okay. Mrs. Condon, do you have your hand up?
I also agree with having them come to a presentation. I know last year or the year before, I can't remember, last year, when they came to present, we had 2 companies come and the presentations weren't that long with questions, and I just feel that the public should have that opportunity to see the companies that we're hiring. So I would recommend doing it at an open meeting that's televised so the public can see that what these 2 companies are all about and how we go about making our decision.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I guess maybe, just to make it all nice and official, if somebody could just make a motion relative to that so that we can give the chair the authority to proceed with contacting these companies and coordinating some type of public presentation.
So move, what you just said.
Okay?
Second.
Okay. So we have Mr. Abrahamson made the motion and Dr. Page seconded it. Do you have that, Julianne?
I'm not sure how to word it.
Contacting the companies and arranging for a presentation. Giving
Giving the chair the authority.
Chair the
Authorize the
authority.
chair
Authorize the chair to
to
contact.
Right.
contact companies, arrange for a presentation to the school committee.
Okay.
Okay, when you're all set, we'll do a roll call on that, please.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes?
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
All yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 10, new business. The next regular school committee meeting will be held on Tuesday, March 24th, 2015, at 7 o'clock in council chambers. And we'll move on to member forum. We'll start at this end tonight. Mr. Abrahamson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, one of the policies that we had a second acceptance of a second reading tonight deals with the school committee legislative program. And I'd like to read just because it's the preamble that we're going to be adopting. And it says, the school committee as an agent of the state must operate within the bounds of state and federal laws affecting public education. If the committee is to meet its responsibilities to the residents and students of this community, it must work vigorously for the passage of new laws designed to advance the cause of good schools, and for the repeal or modification of existing laws that impede this cause. And those are just words unless we put some meat behind them. And this is my own view. This is members' forum, so I speak for myself. Years ago, humorist Will Rogers used to rile the Washington politicians with his barbed humor. Sometimes they take to the floor and vent their anger, resulting in Rogers' words being recorded in the congressional record. Then others would object to the words of a jokester being part of the congressional record. Will Rogers had this reply: "My little jokes don't hurt nobody, but when Congress makes a joke, it's a law, and when they make a law, it's a joke." Madam Chair, I can't help but wonder what Will Rogers would say about the current Congress's attempts to rewrite or revise the so-called No Child Left Behind Act. Sometimes we lose sight of the fact that what's done in Washington affects our schools right here in Southbridge, and we are subject to the laws they pass. In the case of No Child Left Behind, 13 years ought to be enough time to know that its test-based policies driving education reform have utterly failed, and the effects have become the cruelest joke of all on the neediest of our children. The discussion now is not whether high-stakes testing should be scrapped, but which high-stakes test is best. That's the wrong discussion, and ensures that nothing will be done to right the odious wrongs done in the name of reform and accountability. Madam Chair, testing has always been part of assessing what children are learning, and no one wants to change that. But it's only a part of a complex whole. As things currently stand, proficiency by all students on high-stakes tests such as MCAS or the proposed PARCC exam is required to show that a student is properly educated. If we can only dissect each student enough, the prevailing wisdom goes, they'll pass the high-stakes test. If they don't, it's considered proof that the schools are failing. And to make sure that they understand that, schools and districts are punished until they see the error of their ways. It's a cruel hoax, but it's the law, and you must meet it, or else you get a Hester Prynne-type label for all to see. The Scarlet U, underperforming. Madam Chair, I don't expect the situation to change anytime soon, because there's lots of money to be made in the current testing industry. Money buys the type of education reform we have, and that money begets more money. Madam Chair, No Child Left Behind has been the catalyst for school choice and charter schools, and this has done more to segregate our public schools along socioeconomic lines than the dark days when separate but equal was the law of the land. Our schools are becoming decidedly more segregated and increasingly unequal. I'll close with this, Madam Chair. Here in Southbridge, we have a number of challenges that are made all the more difficult under education reform. Thankfully, I know we have some exceptional administrators and teachers who place the children in front of them as their top professional priority. Day after day, they work tirelessly to dot all the I's and cross all the T's required under a rigid and rigged reform system. They are a credit to the teaching profession, and I thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else on this side? Okay, we'll move to my left. Anybody on this side? Okay, very good. All right, then, so we'll move on to agenda item number 12, executive session. There will be executive session this evening. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the government bargaining or litigation position, and the chair so declares, and I do declare, there will be relative to potential litigation, interest-based bargaining with the Southbridge Educational Association and the Service Employees International Union Local 888. Also, Section B, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsections A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel for 1, the Director of Finance contract, and 2, the Supervisor of Maintenance and Facilities contract. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Mr. Abrahamson makes the motion. Dr. Page seconds it. There is no discussion. I need a roll call, please.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Oh, yes?
Thank you. The school committee will reconvene in open session for the purpose of adjournment only. Thank you and have a nice evening. Thank you. Scribble. I have more in my bag.